Now that Conan O'Brien has stepped away from daily late-night format shows and is going to start working on other projects, I want to bring attention to something people do not give Conan enough credit for: putting great rock and metal bands on national television.
Not only that, but many bands gained thousands of fans due to getting airtime on Conan's shows going back to the mid-90s, and it stayed that way with Conan's different programs for over 20 years. Conan loved live music, loved good bands, and his shows gave a lot to music fans. So let's take a look at 10 memorable musical guests and what they did on Conan.
This is not a top 10, no ranking, just a list. Also, I'm aware that there are more than 10 of these. I had to narrow it down somehow though. So if you know of a great musical performance on Conan over the years, leave a comment below. Also, since YouTube is being aggressive with copyright claims, I can't just show uninterrupted clips even though this is fair use. So a link to each performance discussed on this video is in the description. You know how these videos work, let's get to it.
Please welcome Disturbed!
Starting off with arguably the most successful Conan performance due to the fact that Disturbed's cover of The Sound of Silence was nominated for the Best Rock Performance Grammy because of this appearance on Conan back in 2016. This was less than a year after Immortalized came out and after everyone discovered the unexpected and bombastic Simon & Garfunkel cover. Not only did Disturbed double down on making the performance all classy, but the group also added a full orchestra with David Draymond sitting down. This was so far removed from the days of "No Mommy, Don't Do It Again," it's ridiculous. You could tell Conan loved it. The performance caught a new generation of fans for Disturbed. This was a huge success across the board, and it was the first Conan on TBS clip to get over 100 million views on YouTube. An impressive showing that proved Disturbed were capable of doing much more than early 2000s nu metal to those who weren't aware yet.
It would be interesting to be in that audience for Conan, trying to explain to someone who Disturbed was, who didn't know the band, the wild music from years ago, and then seeing this gorgeous arrangement. Doesn't seem like the descriptions match up well for a band named Disturbed.
Please welcome A Perfect Circle.
Jumping back to the turn of the century, when A Perfect Circle came out of nowhere and Maynard James Keenan started singing for another group, it was on Conan that the world got their first visual glimpse of what the band was all about, and this is still a cherished performance of Judith. This Conan appearance was 1 week before the multi-platinum Mare de Non dropped, and Judith was already getting solid airplay, so the band giving this memorable of a show on TV sealed the deal for many people. Back in the day, there were many Tool fans that didn't even know it was Maynard at the front of A Perfect Circle at that point, since the debut album wasn't released yet, and there he was, screaming along with the new group and dominating the show that night. That final moment with everyone screaming was such an exclamation point as well, and I feel like it was the best way for A Perfect Circle to kick the door down, all with Conan coming on thanking them after. I like to think even he realized it was a big deal that night.
Please welcome, from Berkeley, California, Green Day.
Going back further in time to 1994, when Green Day were young, on top of the world with Dookie, and made their national TV debut on Late Night with Welcome to Paradise. Seeing how much energy Green Day had back in the day really does make you feel like you're looking into a time machine, along with the old Conan set and design, as this was still early in Conan's late night career. It's so interesting to see Green Day and Conan at younger ages with decades of success ahead of them. Green Day nailed their performance of the song, there was a great vibe that is sorely missed on TV performances now with bands, and it sounded like Green Day could not wait to get started from the opening note. The Welcome to Paradise performance is worth seeing as well as hearing, because when you look at how fast and ferocious Billy Joe and Mike play, it makes you wonder how many instruments they went through on a regular tour that year. Green Day wasn't yet a household name at that time, but they definitely made an impression in every house tuned in that night in 1994.
And please welcome At the Drive-In.
One of the wilder performances ever on Conan came with just 5 men playing on stage and not being able to contain themselves. At the Drive-In were finally gaining the big spotlight after One Armed Scissor got airplay, and the buzz for Relationship of Command was out there. The fans of At the Drive-In were over the moon, and Conan O'Brien had no idea what to expect. Not only was the band's performance over the top, but Conan talked about their set years later, saying it was one of the strangest performances ever on his show. Conan said the audience was very polite and was only there to see At the Drive-In. An entire studio audience waiting patiently through a monologue and guests just to see At the Drive-In lose their minds. To sum up how crazy it was, Cedric just disappears into the ether after a few minutes because he started running around. He was jumping off of everything. Omar couldn't stay still either. It was loud and chaotic, just like At the Drive-In. Poor Conan must have been so confused.
I wish the camera would have panned over to Conan at least once during that performance, just to show his mouth hanging open with a confused look on his face. It would have been gold.
Please welcome System of a Down.
From one type of onstage intensity to another, System of a Down's debut on Conan went over big with many people, as some fans feel this is the best live performance of Spiders ever. Keep in mind, this was long before System of a Down became a meme in heavy music with Chop Suey, so even fans of the debut self-titled were still getting accustomed to the group, let alone a national audience. The Awake part was eye-opening from Surge and prophetic of what the band would become, and while their appearance definitely must have startled some of the crowd who had no clue who System of a Down were, the band made a big shockwave to anyone seeing them for the first time on Conan. Darren was on another level with his performance that night, and Surge was once again the dynamic frontman that he is. Their appearance on American television that night, I think, had many rock and metal fans looking the band up the next day and seeing what else they could do, and a song like Spiders isn't even the tip of the iceberg for them.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Bowie.
A unique show in the world of late night was when the world turned to clay, including David Bowie. After a late night episode in late 2002 was aired, the late night crew decided to have some fun and make an entire episode redone in claymation in 2003. Instead of just airing a rerun, why not use Play-Doh? On top of that, it's David Bowie Play-Doh. It's great! Bowie had a fantastic performance of Afraid, and he was the perfect musical guest for this, as Bowie had been on Conan many times. Bowie sounded great, and seeing him in another iteration somehow added to his legacy as both a guest on Late Night and as a performer. Even though the whole performance and episode had already been seen in the traditional sense, there's something about a bunch of clay blobs resembling Bowie and his band that pulls you into the show. David Bowie is greatly missed, and the whole episode is worth digging up on YouTube to watch, but Bowie seals the deal, Mr. Bill style.
Please welcome Lamb of God.
From Afraid to Pathetic, seeing a band as heavy as Lamb of God on Late Night still blows my mind for 2007, but it absolutely makes sense as Sacrament was making the group enormous, and Conan needed to be introduced to the voice of Randy Blythe in person. That opening growl had to have had many elderly viewers turn off their TV instantly in protest. I mean, if there were elderly people in the audience that night, they must have been horrified by this, and that is awesome. Then again, Conan's overall audience has historically been a bit younger, and you could tell from the stage audience that night, the crowd dug it. Blythe went big for his vocal delivery, and the guitar work from Mark Morton was killer. It was a great showing and introduction for many to Lamb of God back in 2007, who hadn't experienced their sound yet while promoting Sacrament that at the time was nominated for a Grammy with Best Metal Performance. And after they finished their song, Conan said quietly to Randy, "Teach me to do that." Greatness recognizing greatness. It's nice.
You shall learn not to disrespect the D.
Of the many times that Jack Black and Tenacious D have come to visit Conan over the years, I wanted to point out a personal favorite of the guitar battle between Jack Black and Conan O'Brien one Christmas season. Some people don't know that Conan is quite the skilled guitarist himself, and he would occasionally play on TV, but when it came down to Black versus O'Brien, it was settled in under 2 minutes, with a little help. This was 100% a bit, but it was also so charming and silly that you couldn't help but follow along until the end. After some back and forth, Conan's ability jumped up dramatically, and once Jack Black realized something was up, he pulled back the curtain to find the great and powerful Slash putting in the work instead. It was a fun moment, and seeing Jack Black's confused and disgusted faces made it better. Fun moment from 3 people who knew how to have a good time with the music.
Also, it's worth looking up the Master Blaster performance years before, where Conan suffered a serious accident. Poor guy.
Please welcome our good friends for many years, the White Stripes.
Now for a historic finale on 2 levels. We go to February of 2009 for the final episode of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. Not only was it a fond farewell for Conan, but it also a bittersweet moment for the White Stripes, who were on hiatus at the time, but agreed to return and play together once more for Conan. As it would pan out, this would be the last time Jack and Meg White would play together, performing We Are Going to Be Friends, which is all the more fitting. As the song goes on, you can tell Jack White is trying to keep it together because he doesn't want it to end, but I think deep down, this was a true ending of something big for him that night, as well as Conan. It goes to show that so many musicians loved Conan, and when asked, anyone would go out of their way to perform for him regardless of the circumstances. The White Stripes had an amazing run, and ending it with Late Night seemed perfect for how things played out. And if it weren't for Conan, we wouldn't have gotten such a great ending note with Jack and Meg.
God help us all, it's Slipknot.
God help us indeed. Conan was not a stranger to Slipknot in 2001, as he had had the nod on previously with an intense and visceral performance a little earlier, but I feel the most important one for Slipknot was when they delivered the Heretic anthem in 2001, just a few weeks ahead of Iowa being released. At least this time, Conan was prepared for the band and crowd to get wild on set. Once again, they blew everyone away, and it was rare at the time for Late Night to give heavy, extreme bands airtime like this. The Heretic anthem performance would lead to prove that Slipknot was not a one-album fluke. The other reason this performance was a big deal is because Max Weinberg's son Jay had just discovered Slipknot that year and became obsessed. Jay first saw Slipknot perform live at Ozfest, and Max took Jay to see Slipknot several times, including the famous meeting with Jay dressed up. Years later, and Jay would become the drummer for Slipknot, and Max, Jay, and Jim would all recreate the photos taken. If it wasn't for Conan, the history of Slipknot would be much different for everyone involved.
This might be the most wholesome moment in Slipknot's wild career. I mean, this is great. I don't know of a better, nicer way to end this video. The old and new photos next to each other, it's just perfect.
What's your favorite musical guest to perform on Conan shows over the years? What's your favorite Conan bit? Leave a comment or link and let everyone know. Big thanks to my patrons and a special thanks to Chris Doman. You can have a say in upcoming videos, get weekly new music playlists, and see videos early by supporting Rocked on Patreon. Click on the link in the video description for more info. Please subscribe and ring the bell to get notified on upcoming videos, and you can keep up to date with Rocked on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
Please share links to your favorite performances as well as favorite bits so people can check out great stuff that Conan has done over the years. From the Interrupter to Wiki Bear to the Walker Texas Ranger lever, it's a rabbit hole worth going down, I promise.